Alright, hello class. You will be working, you should be at a center at this time. And I'm going to show you lesson 5.7. Lesson 5.7 is about writing zeros in the dividend. So the objective of this lesson is we will write a zero in the dividend to find a quotient. So just a quick review. Let me go over the parts of a division problem. Okay, so if you look here on the board, and if we had a problem, let's say the problem that we will be doing today is 45.8 divided by 4. So this is your divisor. Okay, let me go smaller so you can see it. This is your divisor, and this is your dividend. So the objective of this lesson is, when do you add a zero to the dividend? When you're doing division or dividing decimals. So if you open your math workbook, we are on page 235. Okay, page 235. The essential question for this lesson is, when do you write a zero in the dividend to find a quotient? So let's go ahead and read the connect part. When decimals are divided, the dividend may not have enough digits for you to complete the division. In these cases, you can write zeros to the right of the last digit. So we're going to go into this. How do we add, or when do we add zeros? So we're going to take, for example, this problem. We're going to read unlock the problem. The equivalent fractions show that writing zeros to the right of a decimal does not change the value. And we've talked about this before, where if you have 90.8, for example, and if you are to add zeros to the right of the decimal, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to change the value of the number. So we can say 90.80, and it's still going to be okay. So here, they're giving you an example. If we were to convert this into a fraction, 90.8, well, 90 stays the same because that's a whole number. And then 0.8, we can write it as 8 over 10. And we can multiply by 10 the numerator and the denominator to make it into 1 over 100 or 80 over 100. And if you write it out, 80 over 100 is the same thing as 0.80. And it has the same value as 90.880. It's the same thing as 90.8. So that's the reason why it works that way. So let's go ahead and read the problem. During a fundraising event, Adrian rode his bicycle 45.8 miles in 4 hours. Find his speed in miles per hour by dividing the distance by time. So remember that every time you have a word problem, you want to circle the numbers that are important and that you will be using to solve the problem. In this case, it says that during the fundraiser event, Adrian rode his bicycle for 45.8 miles. So I'm going to circle 45.8 because I know that that's an important piece of information I will need later on. And it's telling me that it's 45.8 in 4 hours. So it took 4 hours for Adrian to ride his bicycle for 45.8 miles. Now, I need to underline what is it that I'm trying to find. What's the question? So even though we don't see it as question mark, we can identify the prompt through the keyword that says find his speed in miles per hour. So they want us to find his speed in miles per hour by dividing the distance by the time. So they actually tell us what we have to do, right? They're telling us to divide the distance by the time. So the distance is 45.8 and the time was 4 hours. So a good practice that we did in one of the lessons is to estimate. And the reason why we estimate is because it'll help us check if our answer makes sense, if it's correct. And you want to do it even if you do it in your head. But we want to always be doing it. And maybe at the beginning you want to write it. And then, so later on you do it automatically in your head. So 45.8, I'm dividing by 4, so that's close to 44. 44 and 4 would be a compatible number because I can divide 44 by 4 and get a whole number. So that would equal 11. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the first step. And our first step is to write the decimal point in the quotient above the decimal point in the dividend. Okay, once again, first step, write the decimal point in the quotient of the decimal point in the dividend. So the reason why we're doing this is because one of the hardest part with dividing decimals is lining up your decimal points correctly. So my decimal point here is here, so I need to make sure that it's lined up. Okay, the next step is to divide the tens, the ones, and the tens. So we're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to follow our rules. If you remember, does McDonald's sell burgers? So I'm going to write them here on the side so I can remember that I need to do D for divide, does McDonald's sell burgers? D for divide, M for multiply, S for subtract, B for bring down. Okay, those are my steps. So my first step is to divide, and I'm going to start by dividing the tens. Okay, this is my tens. Can I fit the 4 into the 4? Yes, right? I can fit the 4 into the 4. So, and I can fit it one time. So I divide it. Now I'm going to multiply. 4 times 1 equals 4. Then I'm going to subtract. 4 minus 4 equals 0. My next step is to bring down, right? I subtracted, now I need to bring down. So I'm bringing down the 5. How many times can I fit the 4 into the 5? Okay, and I'm going to just do it, even though this is easy, I'm going to do the strategy that I thought you guys, if you're having trouble with division and your timetables, you can always write on the side your facts so that it's easier to find the number that you can divide it into. So 4, 8, and then add 4, that's 12. If you add 4, that's 16. If you add 4, that's 20. If you add 4, that's 24. Add 4, that's 28. Add 4, that's 32. And so on. I'm going to stop right there for now. And so now I'm 5. I need to divide. So I think that I can fit 4 ones. So 1 times 4 equals 4, and I subtract, and that's 1, because 5 minus 4 equals 1. Okay, and then I not forget my decimal point there. My next step is to bring down. So I'm bringing down the 8. Okay, now, how many times does a 4 fit into the 18? Well, look at my numbers, and 16 is the one that I can go use and not go over 18. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's fitting it 4 times. 4 times 4, okay, because I divided, now I multiply. 4 times 4 equals 16, right? And then I need to subtract. 18 minus 16, or 8 minus 6 is 2. 1 minus 1 equals 0. Now, I still have 2, and before we used to put remainder 2, but this is when, this is what the new concept that we're learning. Now we're not going to do remainder. We're actually going to write the numbers that go after without writing remainder. So our next step is to write a 0 in the dividend and continue dividing. So this is answering the essential question. When do you write a 0 in the dividend to find a quotient? Well, when you need to keep dividing. So we add a 0 in your dividend so that we can continue dividing. Okay, this is the work that we've done so far, right? We had 11.4, and we're going to go ahead now and bring down. We still continue with our steps, but now we are bringing, 18 minus 16 is 2, and now we're bringing down the 0, so that makes it into a 20. Now, how many times does the 4 fit into the 20? Well, I have 20 here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times 4 equals 20, and I subtract, and that equals 0. So by adding my 0 after the 8, I was able to complete this division problem without writing remainder. Because when you have decimals, you don't write remainder. You need to find the exact number that would go on your quotient. So Adrian's speed was 11.45 miles per hour. Go ahead and flip the page. Okay, and so when you divide whole numbers, you can show the amount that is left over by writing a remainder or a fraction. By writing zeros in the dividend, you can also show that amount as a decimal. So here's another example. You're going to divide until the amount less than the divisor is left over. So let's go ahead and, so we divided here, okay? And I'm going to go over the steps just so that you can follow. But what they did here is 37. We can't fit the 15 in the 3, so that's why this space is blank. But we can fit the 15 into 37, and we fit it twice. So 2 times 15 equals 30. Then we subtracted. 37 minus 30 was 7. We brought down the 2, so that gave us 72. And then we divide again, 72 by 15. Strategy again, if you don't know, it's too hard. You want to list your facts. 15, and then if you go add 15, that's 30. Add 15, that's 45. Add 15, that's 60. If you can't do this in your head, then just do it on the side. But that's the reason why practicing your facts is so important. So we have 60, and then you add 15, that's 75. So here we have 72. 75 goes over, so we're going to do 60. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that it fit 4 times. 4 times 15 equals 60. Now we subtract. And 72 minus 60, well, let's do it slowly. Can I subtract 0 from 2? Yes, I can. That's 2. Can I subtract 6 from 7? Yes, that's 1. And now my next step from the McDonald's sell burgers, after subtracting, I need to bring down. And so this is where my number was a whole number, 372. But now I'm going to add the decimal point here, because remember that every whole number has a decimal point at the end of the last digit. And then we add the 0 in the dividend. So now we have a number to bring down, and that's 0. How many times does 15 fit into 120? Well, I just went to 75, so that means I need to keep going. 75 plus 15 would be 90, right? Because you do it in your head. 5 plus 5 makes 10. So 7, 8, 9. And then plus 15, that's 105. And then plus 15 is 120. And bingo, that's the number I need. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had to go up to 8 to get to 120. So I'm going to write 8. And 8 times 15, you should get 120. I subtracted, and that is, you subtract, and that equals to 0. So my answer is 24.8. So this is a main concept, and now I need, we're going to try this one. These examples is what I just taught you, now adding to what we learned yesterday in class on lesson 6, which is dividing and when we have 2 decimal points. So if you didn't get that lesson, then pay close attention.